I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. In remarks on the Senate floor last week, Senator Ron Wyden spoke about the CHIPS Act. The Oregon Democrat spoke about the ubiquity of chips in daily life and how the pandemic caused a shortage of chips. The CHIPS Act would have about $54 billion in subsidies for U.S. semiconductor companies. Take a listen to Senator Wyden's remarks.
President, the American economy...
We're in a quorum calls, Senator.
Ask unanimous consent to vacate the quorum call.
Without objection.
Mr. President, our economy is as resilient as any in the world. And at the same time, we know that it's important to always look to modernize key economic policies, particularly as it relates to fundamental questions of research and development, and also production and manufacturing, in order to create high-skill, high-wage jobs from sea to shining sea. Now, I come from a state that's a leader in technological innovation, not just for our country, but for the world. Oregonians know how important it is to invest and make sure that the U.S. stays at the forefront of technological breakthroughs. And the reality is, when it comes to chips, we've got some important work to do. So I want to take just a few minutes to describe why it's so essential for the Congress to get this legislation done now. First of all, our bill is going to bring down costs for consumers and businesses. Everybody knows there are chips in laptops, phones, and cars. But there are also chips in refrigerators, even vacuum cleaners, as we saw at Stark's in Southeast Portland recently. From the time you pick your head up off the pillow to the time you go to bed at night, you're interacting with chips. That's what makes it such an economic nightmare when the pandemic hit and the supply of semiconductors got cut short. Prices for a host of important goods went into the stratosphere. Some products weren't available at all. Factories in America went dark because they couldn't get component parts. Anybody who's had to buy a car in the last few years probably can tell you a horror story about the buying process. This legislation is going to go a long way to increasing the production and manufacturing of chips in this country and bringing down consumer costs and addressing the shortages by increasing the supply here in America. That leads to my second point. Investing in domestic chip production is going to create a huge, huge number of good-paying jobs. Oregonians know well that the jobs at these chip makers can become an economic fuel for a whole region of the country. We need to guarantee that investment happens here in America instead of overseas. Third, the bill is going to help shore up our national security and our economic security. With respect to the economy, when there aren't enough chips to keep our factories running and our shelves stocked, workers and the American economic system suffers. And when the vast majority of chips are produced in just a few sites overseas, there's a big risk that the United States won't be able to get its hands on the chips needed to keep the American people safe in a conflict. Mr. President, I'm a member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. I can't get involved in classified matters that I have access to, but I want everybody in the Senate to know this is a top-tier national security issue. So producing more chips here at home means that our economy will be more resilient for the days ahead, and our country will be safer and more secure. One last comment in this short statement. The Senate passed a larger version of this bill last year, and it included a trade package that Senator Crapo and I, our colleague from Idaho, worked together on. It focused on cracking down on China's worst trade abuses, including the horrendous practice of forced labor. include proposals that went after authoritarian censorship overseas, a growing danger to freedom of speech here in America. I also sought to update the system for job training and worker support, so key to our workers having access to high-skill, high-wage jobs. That trade package is not included in this slimmed-down version of the CHIPS legislation. I can promise, however, as chairman of the Finance Committee, we will keep working on these issues, cracking down on trade cheats, fighting for investment and jobs in America is at the top of the priority list for the Finance Committee. I look forward to continuing our work on those issues in the weeks and months ahead. This legislation, Mr. President, is long overdue. It is a serious, fresh commitment to innovation in America. I'm proud that I was able to lead the effort in the Senate Finance Committee to focus on producing and manufacturing more semiconductors in America. It's hugely important for my state, which really does research and development for the entire country, but it's important for all Americans every single day. Because from the time you get up in the morning till the time you go to bed at night, you're using these chips. And this is, in my view, the first step of many that we have to take to promote more innovation and the path to creating high-skill and high-wage jobs in America. Let's take the first step with this important legislation, pass this bill. I urge my colleagues to vote for it later when we get to the final vote. And, Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call. Will the senator please withhold his request?
I withhold.